embodiment is not about listening to the body. Listening to the body is a form of division. The present isn't just outside of me. The present lives through me at every moment. You can listen with the ear, but it's not real listening. It's when you feel the sounds of the world through the body. We've been taught to dissociate from the body. We've been taught to live in the head. But we're trying to go from the head to the heart. It's telling the heart, oh, you should open here. Oh, don't be afraid. If I know what everything is, why would I bother feeling any of it? You can be who you know yourself to be, or you can be present.
Welcome to the Vitalist podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
Well, this is Sera, and I'm here with Philip Shepard, an expert in embodiment and the author of 2 books, Radical Wholeness and New Self, New World. So we are very excited to be diving into the topic of embodiment because it has something that has been a strong theme in Keiko and I's lives. And we are here with the expert, and your work has made a tremendous impact into the way that we have been experiencing our bodies. And we are excited to share your teachings and your wisdom with our community. So welcome to the Vitalist, Philip.
Oh, thank you. It means so much to hear that. I mean, the hope is always that what you offer will land and take root and offer something positive. So thank you.
Well, I would love to start with your perspective on culturally, what has shifted us out of our bodies, and what do you think this is costing us?
It's a culture that habituates us to disembodiment, and to look at the origins of that is to gain some sense of how deeply encoded it is in our language, in our institutions, in our hierarchies, in our values. Because the journey to disembodiment goes back 10,000 years when the Neolithic Revolution took over. So to appreciate prior to the Neolithic Revolution, we found what we needed in nature. We learned to attend to nature. We could feel the world around us with this ancient embodied intelligence that showed us, where animals were. Over the next hill, we could feel their presence. We could feel medicines that were offered by plants. We could feel where water was when we were thirsty. We could feel the world. So we attuned to nature and were guided by nature. And then, we started to take control. And we, gathered seeds, and we didn't eat them all in the fall because we need some to plant next spring. And we, the earth, the breast of the goddess became our property. And plants became our property, and other plants became weeds, and certain animals that were our kin became vermin that threatened to eat our plants. And then the tree that was casting our plants into shade had to be cut down because our plants needed more sun to grow. The whole dynamic of our relationship to the world shifted. And with that shift, there were these 3 really crucial shifts that went in tandem with that. One is that as a culture, we were gathered around the mother. To me, anything else is insane. I mean, the mother, the support a mother needs and the support a child needs in growing up, that's the center of our future. And with this shift, we gathered around the father, and he became the head of the household. The other shift was, the goddess was identified with the earth. She was felt shimmering through every leaf and every brook and every bird call. And then we left that allegiance to the earth and somehow aspired to the sky. And suddenly the gods were male gods looking down on us in exactly the same way that we looked down on our domesticated animals. We controlled their lives. We determined the moment of their death. We decided with whom they would mate. We were making decisions over them as we imagined these gods in the sky making decisions on our own lives. And the third shift, which is to me more crucial, is that our center of awareness was in the belly. That is the place from which we felt the world, from which we attuned to the present and the life around us. And I feel that womb of the self in the belly as the female pole of my consciousness. And I feel the head as the male pole of my consciousness, and its abstractions, its facility with systems and pulling things to pieces and gaining perspective. One of the primary strengths of the intelligence in the head is that it gives us perspective, and perspective requires distance. You don't have perspective when you're in the middle of something. So that's invaluable. I'd never want people to construe that I'm against abstract thinking. But if its strength is perspective and you live in the head, then you are going to live in a disconnected way, at a distance from the world around you. And what happened with the Neolithic Revolution, our lives became increasingly abstract as we needed to save the seed and figure out how to till the land and organize in a top-down manner, which is what control requires, rather than the bottom-up understanding of the pre-Neolithic cultures. And you can trace that rise of consciousness through the body in language and in art. I find it interesting, in Homer's day, they had a word fren or phrenes that Homer used over and over, which means mind, and it also means diaphragm. And there's one translator of Homer who preserves that in his translations. He'll have a character say, "The mind within my breast understands your words," which is just gorgeous. And it's interesting to me. So there's the Hellenic culture, which in many ways gave rise to theater as we know it, and mathematics, and philosophy as we know it. And it's this flowering of human potential and understanding and curiosity that occurred at a point where we were midway between these two poles. And then we went from there up into the head. By Plato's day, so maybe 350 BC or so, he wrote a dialogue called Timaeus, in which this very wise man is asked, "How did the gods fashion us?" And his answer was, well, first they fashioned this divine orb based on the spheres of the heaven. And then they realized it wouldn't be able to get around. So they grew it a vehicle, arms and legs and a trunk, so it could get around. So there we are. The head in 350 BC is the divinest part of us, and the body is a vehicle. So there's our journey to disembodiment. And that's 350 BC. So we've becoming, in general, more and more and more abstract and disconnected ever since.
This polarity you talk about, the masculine and feminine, is really interesting. Was there a reason we needed to feel this change in polarity in order to come back to at least integrating the feminine more? Do you find that it was on purpose? We had to experience the extreme in order to know what was missing?
And we wouldn't have Rembrandt, we wouldn't have Bach, we wouldn't have the Taj Mahal, we wouldn't have Japanese no theater. So yes, that we wouldn't have medicine as we know it, or science as we know it, or math. So our understanding of the world was sort of catapulted in a way that had huge benefits, and it we're at the terminus I feel, of that journey. We're so hyper male in our thinking and our way of being that we struggle to feel the present. Well, that's all the body does feel, is the present, is what is here now. And you have to go on a retreat and sit in silence to feel present. And it's all there, but the body is the merest afterthought in general when we consider, the challenges of our modern world and how can we solve this meta crisis on so many levels. And to me, until we come back to the body, we will remain in a top-down relationship with ourselves and with the world. And I think there's nothing more basic than our relationship with our own body. I think it sets the template for every other relationship. And so to have that top-down relationship with the body remain unchanged, and technology will never change it. There's no technology that will bring us back to ourselves and to the earth on which we rest. So our reaching for technological solutions in the face of these life-threatening challenges is a distraction, I feel. I think the deficit that is propelling us at this point is a deficit of self-knowledge. And to come back to self-knowledge requires a sort of pause and reflection and willingness to feel.
For the person listening to this, they've never felt embodied. How do we define embodiment? And then how is that different than being aware of the body or listening to the body?
So my definition for embodiment would be that it is a state in which the whole of your intelligence comes into coherence with the present. So we compartmentalize our intelligence. I can think abstractly, or I can feel from the heart, or I can have a gut feeling, and there's so many centers of intelligence in the body. The hands have intelligence. I go to pick up 3 or 4 things, and can I get them? Oh, my hands know what to do before I do. But these are all compartmentalized, and embodiment brings all of that into coherence, not within the self exclusively, but into coherence with the present. So that goes to the second part of your question. Embodiment is not about listening to the body. That is a necessary step on the way to embodiment. If you don't feel the body, if you don't, hello down there. But listening to the body is a form of division. It's a form of separation from the body. It's like the metaphor tells us, well, the body is in the room next door, and if you can put your ear to the wall, you'll touch in with what's happening on the other side of the wall, as though there were this unbreachable divide. And I reject, for myself personally, the mind-body phrase that seeks to identify what our experience is. Our experience is a body-world experience. There is no abruption. There is no divide between me and the world. What I experience is inherently fed by the exhalations of forests that are bringing oxygen to my body, by the fluctuations of the present that inform me and guide me. So listening to the body is a necessary step, but ultimately, to me, it's about listening to the world through the body. And it's in that relationship that you become present. When I'm present, the quality of that experience is one in which I feel myself being organized by the present. I'm being touched by it. I'm being informed by it. I'm being guided by it. And if I've organized myself, which listening to the body tends to lead to, well, I should do this, I should do that. It's a supervisory condition. If I've organized myself, I become immune to that, the delicacy with which, the subtlety with which I can feel myself being organized by the present.
I feel like so many people can understand, okay, we have the five senses or the six senses, but you're talking about we are sensing from within, not an outside in. So can you distinguish how our culture uses the senses more to listen to the body versus what you're talking about? It's just like you are deeply feeling and experiencing your relationship to the world around you. How do you get someone to experience that?
There's this deep, deep cultural paradigm that says you are alone. And there is this envelope of skin that contains you. And then there's the world that is outside. And there is no divide that is not porous. So, there are these phrases like, you want embodied presence. I think, what a ridiculous phrase. I mean, if you are embodied, you are present. If you aren't present, you are embodied. It's this tautology that is wrought by this tyranny around which our culture has gathered. So in mythology, Joseph Campbell refers to the mythological tyrant as the man of self-achieved independence. And you think about that phrase, and well, that sounds pretty good. I mean, that's the American dream, self-achieved independence. And it is the pull that sucks us into tyranny. And I'm not lobbying for your vote, but if I were the emperor of the world, I think I would outlaw the word independence until somebody somewhere could show me an example that it could refer to. There's nothing in the world that is independent. There's nothing in the cosmos that is independent. Everything influences everything. Everything depends on everything. There's no independence. And this aloneness has left us with five senses, in which the model of a sense is that the stimulus from the outside world crosses the barrier of the self, lands on a receptor, the information is sent to the brain to be interpreted. And I find that curious. For example, balance. We don't validate as a sense. I mean, we talk about a sense of balance. We say, I've lost my sense of balance. In our language, we acknowledge it as a sense. But balance violates the barrier that separates us from the world. It is a felt relationship between the center of the earth and my body. There's no divide, and so it threatens to undo this illusion of independence that we so deeply rely on. The present isn't just outside of me. The present lives through me at every moment. And as I drop into my body and I look at a tree outside my window, yes, I see the tree there, but I feel it in my body. And there's a culture, the Anglo-Ewe culture in Africa, that doesn't have a word for sense, but they have the word sesilalame, which means feel at flesh inside. And they'll say, you can listen with the ear, but it's not real listening. You can see with the eye, but it's not real seeing. It's when you feel the sounds of the world through the body, when you feel the sights of the world through the body, that you are truly seeing, that you are truly hearing.
Was there a moment when it finally clicked for you? Like, oh, there's this inward experience, not just me relating to the world, but when did you first feel that embodiment sense?
It was a long, slow, incremental process. there were moments so let me set this up a little bit. I think we hugely overcomplicate what it is to be present. We have imagined it, conceptualized it as a form of self-organization. So somebody says to you, just be present, and you say, okay, just give me a moment. And I organize myself into what I imagine presence to be. And presence, there's a static quality and a standalone quality to presence in our imaginations. So I feel an equivalence. I look for another doorway into presence, and I feel an equivalence between presence and receptivity. So if I am fully present to you, I'm fully receptive to you. If I'm fully receptive to you, I'm fully present to you. There is no such thing as standalone receptivity. It's about relationship. We tend to pull presence into this standalone quality. So I remember a moment where I realized I could just receive. I didn't have to do anything about it. I didn't have to organize it. I didn't have to strive for any outcome as a result of the receptivity, where I could just receive. And I was standing at the rail of a ferry crossing a harbor, and I allowed myself for the first time since childhood, I suppose, to just receive. And there was this relief of undoing, of responsibility for organizing, for caring, for getting it right. And then there was this intimacy of just being with the light on the water and the soft sky beyond and the sway of the boat. And it was, and there were many such moments along this incremental journey, but that sort of stands out as one that was very significant for me.
So how do you guide people in increasing the sensitivity to those feelings in the body? Because I think our culture has so many words for the mind. We have very few words for the body. Most people feel tight, stressed, tense, and it kind of ends there.
Well, yeah, I mean, what our culture does when it says mind is it thinks brain. I mean, there's the first impediment. I feel my mind suffusing every cell in my body. My mind attunes to the world. So here's a metaphor. I have a singing bowl. To me, that's the body. And when I say body, the body includes the head. When I say head doesn't include the body. Just to be clear. And the body is a resonator. So if I strike the singing bowl, it sings to the world. And that's what my body does. But what happens in our culture is we sort of stuff the body with our concerns and our anticipations and our abstractions and our ideas of success and failure and our doubts and our regrets. And so the present, it's still going, like this, but we don't feel it. And so what happens in that state, you can only guide yourself. You've lost the guidance of the present. And so we sit in our heads and agonize over our decisions and weighing pros and cons and all the rest of it. And so the journey back to the body is one in which you integrate the barriers within it, the membranes that separate this from that, the stuck energies, the orphans within the body. You integrate that so that it can once more sing to the present. And what the work that we share does in particular is it illuminates the ways in which our culture has shaped our neurology to desensitize us. So almost every exercise I share is one that enables someone to sort of bump up against a pattern that they are likely not aware of, never have been aware of, and you bump up against it, and it's a little like the effect in quantum mechanics, where if you notice, if you see something, if you observe it, it starts to change. And so you bump up against it, and suddenly it's pulled into the light, and it starts to change. And then the practices themselves help people beyond that. So, I think I've recorded 350 practices or something, and that's an indication of how many ways our culture subtly turns us away from relationship into self-supervision, into self-consciousness.
This all reminds me of that quote, and I think it's an anonymous quote, but it's, tension is who we think we are. Relaxation is really who we are. And so what's required for that? You said the receiving, which I think is so good. People just use that word of like get present, and you're talking about organizing your presence, which is so counterintuitive. But how do you help people just receive themselves?
I don't think there's a valuable thing that we could call my identity. We're encouraged to know thyself, but that's Socrates. That's in a very, very different context from what we are. What we have is this. There's sort of two kinds of ways of knowing. One is analog, one is digital. So the body is analog. It feels the currents of the present passing through it. Every sensation that we have is attuning to waves, whether it's sound waves or light waves or heat, and we find in those waves ultimately an almost infinite amount of information. I think of the knowledge that the body can access as an ocean, and I don't know what its limit is. And I think of the knowledge the head can access as a swimming pool. And it's built its model of the world, and it's shuttling around within its model, trying to supervise. So what we've done with this digital information is we've constructed an identity. It's like a grocery list. I know who I am, and this is my favorite movie, and these are my beliefs, and on and on and on. I think we face a choice that you can be who you know yourself to be, or you can be present. I don't think you can have it both ways. If you know who you know yourself to be, then you've got an identity that provides you with a sort of security that also needs defending. So, if someone contradicts who you know yourself to be, you have to defend your identity, which is different from defending yourself, but it becomes the same thing. So I know myself by coming into relationship with the world. I am illuminated by my relationship. So, that tree outside my window, if I truly feel its presence, suddenly we share this moment in a way that illuminates me. I can look at a child playing on the sidewalk, and to feel that moment, to feel that child, is to be illuminated. I can hold a pebble in my hand and feel its presence and feel myself illuminated. So the more deeply I come into felt relationship with the world around me, the more clearly who I am is illuminated without any need to reify it in an identity. And we are trained towards digital information. We are trained to objectively know. And as a result of that, I can look around and I know what everything is. I can tell you what everything is. If I know what everything is, why would I bother feeling any of it? I already know what it is. It's like this dead end. And it's such a different thing to allow yourself to come into felt relationship, and then you find companionship in everything. And the very idea of aloneness becomes this untenable fantasy.
In your book, you say to feel yourself as whole requires that you feel the mystery that makes you whole.
Yeah, and that digital information has no room for mystery. It's just, how do you digitize? How do you put that into packets? No, it suffuses everything. But the body, you drop into the body and you feel the life of the world around you. And as you dilate into that life, there is a mystery that is holding it all, that is holding you in this moment.
I see in the culture this strong narrative around trauma, experiences that we feel were uninvited, and this wanting to release energy or tension from the body. What's your perspective on that? And where do you see, how do you define integration, and where do you see that happening within the being of the human?
So I think what chiefly characterizes trauma is a dissociation from the body. In that frame of reference, we're all traumatized by our culture. We've been taught to dissociate from the body. We've been taught to live in the head. So there's already this susceptibility that leaves us unable to integrate. I think that the process of integration requires, mainly two steps. One is, here's this insult to your being, this experience that would annihilate you if you had felt it fully in the moment, and you've parked it in the body. And you've denied it expression. And so I think the first step of releasing trauma, of healing trauma, is to allow it its expression. And that can be through movement, because, trauma is an interruption of a natural movement that would have happened. It can be through writing, it can be through talking with someone, it can be through art. There's so many ways of finding that unexpressed, orphaned energy within the body, and being willing to safely give it a voice. But there's a second part for me that I've never heard anyone else speak of, which is the integration. So you've expressed this energy, and then what, is it just gone? To me, you need to gather it. You need to bring it home to the ground of your being. You need to integrate it. Now, in terms of these two poles of consciousness, the male analytical head that pulls things to pieces, and this womb of intelligence in the pelvic bowl that brings things into relationship and integrates them. I mean, it understands wholeness. The head is blind to wholeness. It doesn't realize there is such a thing. But the pelvic bowl, it's like, do you know what a murmuration of starlings is? You get these clouds of birds that like 250,000 birds flying together, and there's this one bird that isn't part of the murmuration, and its flight is erratic and unsteady, and it joins the murmuration, and suddenly it is harmonized by the whole. And that's how I feel. This in the pelvic bowl is where we integrate. So as a culture, we have lost the ability to integrate because we've cast the pelvic bowl into neglect. It's like this source of light has been turned into a pool of darkness. And instead of integrating, what we're trying to do is think our way through things and patch them together, but that doesn't lead to wholeness. So to actually, and again, here's a choice that you face. You can live in a world of energy, or you can live in a world of ideas. We're encouraged to live in a world of ideas. Ideas are frozen energy. A word is a static concept. And the world in reality is energy. The body in reality is energy. And to begin to feel the body's energy is to acquire the choice to integrate it, to let it come back into relationship with the earth, with the sky, with the breeze, with all of its diverse energies coming together like so there is this murmuration of your being in the pelvic bowl that welcomes every energy.
Do you find that because people are more in the mind and they're seeing their body through parts, they're seeing the world through parts, they're missing that wholeness? Do you find that it's required for them to identify the parts in order to feel the wholeness? Or are there ways just you can take them into the breath, perhaps, or feeling the pelvic bowl?
I think everyone's journey is incremental. And within that incremental kind of baby step journey, there are major moments. But there's for me, there's a certain logic to the journey that brings us back to the body. And what is primary for me is a recovery of the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is a diaphragm, just like the thoracic diaphragm is a diaphragm. They move together in an infant. And then what happens in our culture is that gets locked up. And the pelvic bowl, this tender center of our being has been cast into shame and associated with sin, and it's just burdened with top-down judgments. So in many people, they don't feel the pelvic floor, and to begin to feel the pelvic floor, to bring wakefulness to it, to feel what it is, to allow the pelvic floor to release to the breath, and then to realize the pelvic floor can initiate every in-breath. And it's not a muscular action. The pelvic floor releases to the in-breath and releases to the out-breath. And I think in this, in these poles of the headist male and the pelvic bowl female, the headist male works through exclusion. It excludes strawberry from the category of vegetable. They're different. It pulls things to pieces. It pulls them apart. The pelvic bowl is inclusive, so that as a result of that, if you can initiate a release to the breath with the pelvic floor, there is an invitation to the whole of the body. It includes the whole of the body to join in that release. So ultimately you feel the breath wave beginning in the pelvic floor with that release, and there's this breath wave down through the legs to the soles of your feet, and up through the body to the top of the head, and down through the arms to the fingertips. We're 65% water. There is an inner ocean through which the breath wave can travel. And without the pelvic floor newly sensitized, awakened, there is no place in the body where you can land. I feel the pelvic floor is the ground of my being. That's where I drop to when I come home to myself. That's where I drop to when I come to rest on the earth in the present. And we're coming up to Valentine's Day. We are aware of the importance of the heart, and we're trying to turn the heart into that place where we land. But we're trying to go from the head to the heart. When that happens, the head in some way remains supervisory over the heart. It remains in charge. It's telling the heart, oh, you should open here. Oh, don't be afraid. Oh, welcome this person. It's this. And the heart, if the heart is not expressing your being, what is it expressing? If it's not connected to your being, how can it express your being? And so I feel this relationship between the heart and the pelvic bowl in terms of a flower whose roots are deep within the loam of the pelvic bowl, and the flower stem rises through the body, and the heart opens like a flower to the world. And I think of the heart as the portal through which my wholeness meets the wholeness of the world. And if I'm not in my wholeness, it places a burden on the heart. It becomes unsupported, unsteady, vulnerable, shaky, and still we're saying, "Oh no, you're okay. You should open here." So I think that return to the pelvic floor that the pelvic breath enables is the most serious first step in providing you with the security to surrender. So we're so attached to doing and accomplishing that we set up embodiment as something to accomplish, as though you had to find a body somewhere. No, you've got a body. Can you surrender to it? And to say to someone just surrender is sort of fruitless, because just step off the cliff. So I think what happens in this journey to the body is there's a little surrender that feels safe. And in coming back to the body that way, it facilitates a sort of deeper security that facilitates another step into surrender, that facilitates a deeper security. And ultimately, what we're doing is recovering the security of your being, which is something no one and no circumstance can take from you. But without that grounding in the pelvic bowl, what we do is we side with the tyrant and we look for safety. And I think, yes, look both ways before you cross the street. It's good to be safe, but ultimately safety is anti-life. Life is not safe. You're going to get sick. You're going to be wounded. You're going to feel grief. You're going to be injured. You're going to die. To be alive isn't safe. And I think what we do is we draw this conclusion, oh, right, life isn't safe. So maybe if I'm less alive, I'll be more safe. And we make our lives small as a result. And of course that happens because we've been deprived of our security. We've been deprived of the landing place in the body wherein we land in ourselves, come into coherence with the present, and can allow ourselves to be in that full way.
I just want to share the visual. It was one of your recordings on your website, and it was all about the container. And we're not filling it up from the top down. We're filling it up from the bottom up. And that was the most powerful cue that I was like, there's my pelvic floor. There's me receiving the breath.
Gorgeous. Yeah. And that, we're such a top-down culture. We've turned breathing into a top-down operation. And as you say, when the pelvic floor releases to the breath, it's as though the breath first appears there and fills from the bottom up. And it's such a different experience.
I think there's a lot of confusion with how we should move and breathe. Like, can you tell just by looking at someone moving if they're embodied? It's how do we, because part of integration is movement. Like you said, write, breathe, talk, speak. You have to give expression to integration. So I think a lot of people try to feel that to unpack tension and to integrate, they need to move their bodies in very forceful top-down ways. So how can you talk to the mom that is going to Pilates every day, but is completely disembodied and is just using that top-down approach? How can she tune in?
There's one practice I do that I love. Because if you say, oh, I should move, well, that's an idea. And now you're already in a top-down mode of being. So stand still. Just stand still. Your body will want to move. And then let it move as it will, and it's going to be irrational, and who knows what it's working through, but you just let it move. And it is such a deeply irrational journey into the very energy, the fire of your life. And it puts you in touch with impulses that are connected with source. They are connected with your center. They are arising from who knows where, and that's okay. And there are lots of other movement practices I enjoy, but that's the one that has the most potency for renewing the relationship between the head intelligence and the bodies.
I love it. We need standstill classes.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a word that you mentioned in your book, entelechy, and I had never heard of this word, and I feel like it should be a word in everyone's vocabulary. Could you unpack what that word means?
Yeah, it's a concept that traces back to Aristotle. And the easiest way of explaining it is the entelechy of an acorn to become an oak tree. So it is that potential that is seated in each of us that knows what it needs and how to grow. And, the acorn will never grow into a birch tree or a tulip. It will grow into an oak tree. And in that growth, yes, it's shaped by the quality of the soil and the winds and the way the sunlight falls on it. It is responsive to the world. It is animated by the energy of the world. But the entelechy, there is something deep within each young child that knows what it needs to become. And, I'm amazed at the way some kids pick up a stick and they're hitting everything and they become, hockey players or tennis players or whatever. And other kids are just transfixed by drawing lines on paper and coloring. And, everyone is born with a unique cluster of sensitivities. No one in the world has ever had your sensitivities. And I think the world is whispering to us at every moment to put those sensitivities into service. And that is a summoning to our entelechy. And you can ignore the summoning. You can shut that down. And then there's this lovely phrase by Joseph Campbell, organized inadequacy. If you shut down that impulse towards wholeness, you sort of consign yourself to a world of organized inadequacy. But if you take the adventure, it's not that there's a guarantee of success, but there's a guarantee of aliveness and, in my experience, joy, even when the going's not easy.
How are you fulfilling your entelechy?
I've just finished the first draft of a book, and I am thrilled to bits about it. Now it's in the editing process, and I love the editing process. It's like the first draft is carving this river valley through mountain chains, and then you need to etch the riverbed in a way that is smooth and flowing as possible. And that I love the editing.
Any hints to where this book is going?
I think the easiest way of setting it up is to observe that there has never been a culture as clever as ours, and we have forgotten how to live intelligently. So there is an important difference between cleverness and intelligence, and we confuse them. We think cleverness is intelligence, so we call AI artificial intelligence. It's not intelligent. It's very, very clever. It's not intelligent. Intelligence is that attunement that I spoke of earlier, that indigenous cultures attune to the world, because without that attunement they would not survive. They would not find the medicine in the plants. They would not find the the animals that gave the gift of their lives to nourish the family. And we've strayed so far from the body. We've strayed so far from this ancient, subtle intelligence and contracted into our cleverness. And we believe cleverness will save us. And it's a disaster in the making.
What books do you recommend that speak to the potentiality of embodied wisdom that we can read until your next book comes out?
Radical Wholeness and New Self, New World, if you've already read those. Deep Fitness is another book that I wrote, co-wrote with Andrei Yakovenko. And it may seem sort of tangential to the argument, but I mean, the body and fitness sort of go together. But how to approach fitness in a way that is not top-down. We have so misunderstood fitness because of a book that was published in 1968 called Aerobics by Kenneth Cooper. He made up the word aerobics. He was like the advisor to the Surgeon General and advisor to NASA, a highly respected medical doctor. And there were four main contentions. So he said, the purpose of exercise is to strengthen the heart and lungs. So the most important exercise is cardio. The more you do, the better. He had a point system. And the more point, you swim this far, you walk this far, you add up your points at the end of the week. The more points, the better. And strength training he discouraged because, the more muscle you have, the more load it's going to put on the heart and the lungs. That's the foundation on which we've built our understanding of fitness, and every one of those suppositions is incorrect. Every one of them. So research has in the past 15, 20 years, has identified sarcopenia, which is the wasting of muscle as we age. Sarcopenia is associated with every chronic disease of aging. Every single chronic disease associated with aging is associated with sarcopenia. And then there's this other discovery of myokines, which are messenger molecules that go through the body and promote the health of every organ, every tissue in it. Myokines are created by muscle. The stronger a muscle is, the more intensely it works, the more myokines you produce. So, muscle has two primary functions: to move us around and to create myokines. And the global effect that exercise has on the body is explained by myokines. And the third part is that the most effective way to get stronger only takes half an hour once a week. And it's a very specialized workout that the book talks about, where you move a weight, you move against resistance very, very slowly until you can't move it anymore. You can't even hold it. It goes down by itself. So you've reached the point of momentary muscle failure, which tells the body the environment is presenting challenges that despite our best efforts, we're not strong enough to meet. So it rallies all its resources to remodel the muscle to be stronger for the next time. So, that takes 1.5 to 2 minutes, arriving at failure. And then you go to the next exercise. You don't need a second or third set. And then you go to the next exercise. And then you recover. Your muscles don't get stronger when you're exercising. They get weaker. It's in the recovery process, the remodeling, that they get stronger. So then over the next 2 or 3 days, you don't take them to failure again. So like for most people, the maximum number of workouts you should do in a week is 2, because that's how you get stronger, allowing the muscles to remodel. So there's a whole chapter in there that talks about how to do that workout grounded in the body. There's no willpower at all. It's just intention living through the body, the breath moving the weight, you just in the full experience of it. Original Wisdom is a book I would recommend to come back to your original question, by Robert Wolfe. It's this slim, gorgeous volume in which the author speaks of his experiences with indigenous cultures, primarily in Malaysia, the Sengoy culture, and his humility and honesty and sensitivity. He learns through a mentor how to feel the world as indigenous cultures does. He learns how to attune it and read it through his body. It's gorgeous.
How would you see the world changing if we rebuilt our entire culture to be able to feel through the body?
Much to our surprise, we would start to recognize enough. We've obliterated enough. What's enough money? What's that number? Like $1 billion? 2 billion? I mean, the wealthiest people in the world still need more. There's no calibration for enough. You know, what's enough technology? Well, we certainly need more. What's enough information? Oh, we need more, more, more. And we live on a finite planet. And there's only so much it can tolerate in the demands we place on it. You see, when you move out, when the center of your awareness moves out of the pelvic bowl into the head, you leave this emptiness within the body that demands to be filled. And we reach, we become addicts to shopping and making money and gambling and whatever else, distractions. Let's distract ourselves from this emptiness. And, to profoundly shift our relationship with the body is to feel when the present is not enough, it's because you're insufficiently present. I mean, it's just so clear. And without the body, that's the state we live in. And our whole neurology has been designed to respond to stress. Stress used to be intermittent. Saber-toothed tiger coming. And then it leaves and the stress is gone. But right now we have 30-year mortgages and we have visa debts and we live with stresses of aloneness and to come back to the body is to come back to companionship. And I mean, the companionship of everything. There's a really brilliant thinker, Michael Levin. I would watch any YouTube he has. I love his research, the questions he's asking. And he argues that intelligence isn't a creation of the brain. Intelligence is a nature of the universe. And that there is a continuum of intelligence from, and he even speaks of agency, from subatomic particles up to humans. And we are just not sufficiently equipped to recognize how intelligence appears at that level, at the subatomic level. But he's done experiments, and others have too, that begin to look into that. When you come back to the body, there's these fundamental things the body understands. It understands that it belongs. I come into relationship with that tree outside my window. We belong to each other. I come back to my body. I rest in the body. The present and I, the pen and I, there is a belonging. We share the same origins in star matter. So the body understands that it belongs. It understands that in some sense everything is alive, and it feels wholeness. It feels the mystery, and the mystery it feels doesn't mystify. It guides. It guides in every moment from the darkness. That impulse can be felt arising, helping you forward, supporting you forward. So to come back to the body shifts all of that. And then we, to come back into harmony with the self. We live in self-consciousness. We live in this divided state. How can you come into harmony with the world without finding harmony within yourself, without, the coherence of your energy coming into coherence with the present? And then the possibility of living in harmony with the world rather than in desperate exploitation of it is made possible. It arises as not just a possibility, but a necessity. And everything becomes, in a way, gentler. It's impossible to be gentle, I think, when there's so much noise in the head. But gentleness is the quality of felt relationship. When I move my granddaughter's arm into her sleeve, I'm gentle with it, and so it dances into the sleeve, and the gentleness enables me to feel the whole of her being. And we've lost gentleness along with so many other things, but without that gentleness, we cannot come back to the body's subtlety. And without finding that subtlety through the body, we will remain immune to the guidance of the world.
Thank you for reminding us that we belong and slowing us down. You have this quality, even reading your books, you slow us down and get us to become really present.
Well, where can people find you, follow you, connect with you? I know you teach workshops all over the world.
My website, embodiedpresent.com. And just to say, the work that we do is called the embodied present process. And it's trying to point to the fact that it's not that the present is out there and you're in here and you need to connect with it. The present lives through your body. You embody the present. Can you attune to it through the body? So embodiedpresent.com, and there are free practices. There are interviews. We have a free community that people can join. There's also a membership, which the way I developed this work was I'd find some gap in my sensitivity and I would just be with it and be with it and be with it until it resolved. And then I'd find another one and be with it. So the membership gives one practice a week in the hopes that people will be with it and feel it for a week, and then another practice. And I think there are close to 300 of my practices on it at this point. And, you get 2 free weeks if you want to give it a try. There are lots of ways. And my hope always, of course, is that we can meet in person at some point.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We're really, really grateful to be connected, and I trust we will meet in person soon. I have no doubts about that.
I would love that. Yeah, such a treat being with you both. Thank you.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.